The slap landed so suddenly that the entire diner seemed to freeze in a single breath, as if time itself recoiled in horror. A small, fragile girl staggered beside a vinyl booth, her hand slipping from the edge of the table, her body trembling not from pain alone but from the crushing humiliation that followed. Plates rattled, a spoon clinked against the floor, and in that split second, something sacred was broken in the room. What happened next, however, would quietly travel from heart to heart, restoring faith in humanity in a way no one inside that diner could have imagined. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity to do what is right even when it's hard, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs hope today, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach people who truly need them. Her name was Emily Carter, and she was 21 years old, though life had aged her in ways most people would never understand. Emily had been born with a neurological condition that affected her balance and muscle control, leaving her movements slower, less certain, and painfully obvious to anyone who cared to look. Her left hand trembled slightly when she reached for things, her walk had a gentle sway that strangers often mistook for carelessness, and her speech, while clear, sometimes carried a softness that made cruel people assume she was weak or unaware. She lived with her mother in a small apartment above a closed-down bookstore, and every Tuesday afternoon, she treated herself to lunch at a modest roadside diner called Maple Grove. It was the one place where she felt almost normal, where the smell of coffee and grilled cheese wrapped around her like a memory of better days. That afternoon, the diner was crowded, filled with the low hum of conversations, clattering dishes, and a radio playing old songs that no one listened to anymore. Emily had saved her money carefully, folding bills into an envelope hidden inside a library book, because independence mattered to her more than comfort. She wanted to order her own food, sit alone, and feel like an adult in a world that constantly treated her like a burden. She slid into a booth near the window, placed her cane beside her leg, and focused on breathing steadily, reminding herself that she belonged there just as much as anyone else. Across the diner, 3 young adults had just walked in, loud and careless, their laughter spilling into the room like broken glass. They carried themselves with the reckless confidence of people who had never been told no in a way that mattered. Their eyes scanned the room, not looking for seats but for entertainment, and when they noticed Emily, something shifted. A whisper turned into a smirk into quiet laughter. They slid into the booth behind her, close enough that their shadows stretched across her table, close enough that she could feel the weight of their attention pressing against her back. At first, Emily tried to ignore them. She stared at the menu, tracing the letters with her finger, pretending not to hear the muffled jokes, the exaggerated coughs, the cruel imitation of her movements. Her heart began to race, a familiar rhythm of fear she knew too well. Memories flooded her mind, of school hallways where she had learned to walk faster than her body allowed, of playgrounds where kindness was rare and cruelty effortless. She told herself to stay calm, to eat quickly, to leave before things escalated. But cruelty often feeds on silence, and the more she withdrew into herself, the bolder they became. One of them leaned forward, bumping her table hard enough to slosh her drink. Another laughed too loudly, drawing the attention of nearby customers, but no one spoke. People looked, then looked away, choosing comfort over courage. Emily's hands shook as she tried to steady her glass, her face burning with embarrassment. She felt small, exposed, and utterly alone in a room full of people. Then, without warning, one of the bullies stood up and moved closer, invading her space, mocking her unsteady posture with exaggerated gestures that drew laughter from his friends. The moment that shattered everything came fast and brutal. A careless shove turned into a sharp slap across Emily's face, the sound echoing louder than the radio, louder than the clatter of plates. Her head snapped to the side, her cane clattered to the floor, and for a heartbeat, the world went silent. Pain bloomed across her cheek, but worse than the sting was the look of amusement on their faces, the way they seemed proud of what they had done. Emily felt tears gather in her eyes, not because she wanted to cry, but because her body betrayed her when she needed strength the most. She didn't scream. She didn't lash out. She simply stood there, frozen, her shoulders trembling as she tried to understand how a stranger could see her as less than human. Around her, the diner was still. People stared at their plates, at the walls, anywhere but at her. The silence was heavy, suffocating, and it told her everything she feared about the world she lived in. Then something unexpected happened. From the far end of the diner, an older man slowly stood up. His movements were deliberate, careful, as if he wanted the room to feel every second of his decision. His name was Robert Hayes, a retired high school teacher who had buried his wife 2 years earlier and spent most afternoons reading alone at Maple Grove. He had watched the entire scene unfold, felt his chest tighten with a familiar anger he hadn't known since his teaching days, when he stood between bullies and frightened children who didn't know how to fight back. Robert didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush forward in a dramatic display. Instead, he walked steadily toward Emily, picking up her fallen cane and placing it gently back into her hand. That small act alone shifted the air in the room. Then others began to move. A waitress named Linda, who had lost a brother with special needs, stepped out from behind the counter and stood beside Emily, her face pale but resolute. A young couple rose from their booth, followed by a truck driver near the door, then a mother with her teenage son. One by one, ordinary people found the courage they didn't know they had. The bullies laughed at first, confused by the sudden attention, but the laughter faded when they realized the room had turned against them. No fists were thrown, no insults screamed. Instead, there was something far more powerful, a unified refusal to tolerate cruelty. Phones came out, not to record Emily's pain, but to document the attackers. Someone quietly called the police. Someone else offered Emily a napkin, another a glass of water. She felt hands on her shoulders, gentle and reassuring, grounding her in a moment that was no longer defined by humiliation. When the police arrived, the bullies' confidence crumbled. They were escorted out, their bravado replaced with fear and shame, while the diner watched in silence. Emily sat back down, her body exhausted, her heart still racing, but something inside her had changed. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, protected, valued. After the chaos settled, Linda brought her food, refusing to let her pay. Robert sat across from her, not speaking much, simply offering his presence. The other customers returned to their seats, but the atmosphere was different now, warmer, softer. Strangers smiled at Emily, not with pity, but with respect. She ate slowly, her hands steadier than before, her tears drying as a quiet sense of gratitude filled her chest. Word of what happened spread beyond the diner. A short video, recorded by someone who wanted accountability, went viral. But unlike most viral moments, this one didn't focus on cruelty. It focused on courage. On the people who stood up. On Emily's quiet strength. Messages poured in from around the world, letters, donations, offers of support. Emily was overwhelmed, but she read every message, holding on to the knowledge that her pain had sparked something good. Weeks later, Emily returned to Maple Grove. She was nervous, but determined not to let fear steal something she loved. When she walked in, the staff greeted her by name. Customers nodded, smiled, made space for her without making a show of it. She sat at her usual booth by the window, sunlight warming her face, and for the first time, she felt truly safe there. Just before the ending, we want to ask you something important. Please comment the word humanity below if you believe small acts of courage can change lives. Emily's life didn't magically become perfect. She still faced challenges, stares, and moments of doubt. But now she carried something she didn't have before, a deep, unshakable belief that kindness exists, that strangers can become protectors, and that even in a world capable of cruelty, there is still overwhelming goodness waiting to rise. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of standing up for someone who cannot stand alone, please like this video, share it with others, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps spread these stories of hope and reminds the world that humanity is still very much alive.